architects, planners, traffic engineers, developers, community activists, and other people. And one of the obstacles we see to urbanism is the functional classification system for roads being applied in urban areas. It's okay to apply it in Wyoming or someplace like that, but in the city it tends to undermine the value of the city. And the freeway is probably the best example. Most European cities don't have freeways in the middle of them because they do better. They decided not to do it. Corbusier came up with the great drawing back in 1922 that showed that the idealism, the idea that you could drive through a city without having to slow down, and you'd get the city out of the way. And it's a very idealistic objective, but it's a very narrow objective because it ignores the traditional roles of the street in the urban context, not just movement of goods and services, but also the delivery of goods and services through the marketplace along the streets and the social purpose of streets. And so, you know, Corbusier's design is all over the United States. This is in Crystal City, just near the Reagan Airport in D.C. And the road hierarchy where you concentrate the traffic on large roads, fast roads. And as I said, it works fine if you're going from one metropolitan area to another, but when you try to apply it in the city, it has side effects. You can notice the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, the stuff they fund is the big stuff, and then the local complex road grid is the stuff that they consider outside their jurisdiction, not very important. But that's where all the property value and most of the sales are. And then ultimately the idea of the big roads in the cities was to move people quickly, and it was used as a defense highway. Was one of the reasons we built the interstate system, was to for defense purposes. So like this is Houston, right after the Hurricane Rita, and the traffic is completely coagulated. They had over 50 people die in the traffic jam that developed. It came to a grinding halt. The idea was that these roads would take people out of town. If the Soviets launched, you'd have about 48 minutes for the missile to meet. You'd jump on the freeway, get out of town, the bomb would explode and miss you because you would have driven on the freeway. But the Hurricane Rita shows that that didn't quite work. So anyway, we've worked with the Institute of Transportation Engineers to come up with an urban thoroughfares context-sensitive approach. And this guide, which is embraced by the Federal Highway Administration, can be used in the urban context. It's not in the AASHTO Green Book, but I think eventually they'll adopt it as their own without giving reference to ITE or CNU at the time, but that's all right with us. And we have this little book. You can download that, by the way, from the ITE site for nothing. Just take it down. And this is sort of a summary of all that. It's only 26 pages. Most of it's pictures. You can download that at cnu.org. Okay, so the grid. We're trying to restore the grid like Daniel Burnham's alteration of the L'Enfance grid of D.C., which distributes traffic efficiently. The complexity of the grid actually works in favor of movement within the city. And so we're trying to restore that notion. You can see it at work at Damon, at the Damon stop along the Blue Line, where you have Milwaukee, Damon, and North Avenue coming together. And the streets are congested. But they're not just congested with vehicles. The neighborhood is congested with money and customers and people having a great time. And so the whole idea of congestion needs to be challenged. Not that congestion isn't sometimes bad, but it's a little bit like cholesterol. Cholesterol, you have good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, and congestion can serve the same function. Here at the Red Line stop at Belmont, the same phenomenon. Very congested, traffic level F. In other words, a failure, according to the model that's used so often. This is a failure. Another failure would be Dundas Street in Canada, in Toronto, which is completely traffic level F. It's like Yogi Berra said about New York City. Nobody wants to go there anymore. It's too crowded. And then a city that was very crowded and very successful. This is Woodward Avenue in Detroit in 1946, right after World War II. It was the most successful city in World War II. It produced more material than any other place on earth. Very, very crowded, congested. The state of Michigan Department of Highways, the city of Detroit, the federal government got together and they solved the congestion problem. They don't have a problem with congestion anymore. Sometimes environmentalists say that if you can't build your way out of congestion, that's not true. Detroit did build its way out of congestion. Its population now is 700,000. At the end of World War II, it was almost 2 million. This is Berlin. At the end of World War II, 70% of the city was destroyed. This is Berlin now. It's all built back. Even the eastern parts under the communists are all built back. You can't find evidence of the war unless they can. This is Warsaw, completely destroyed at the end of World War II. Almost every building torn down, completely rebuilt. This section was rebuilt by the communists in 1953, Old Town. This is Rotterdam. Destroyed 2 days after the Dutch surrendered. The Germans bombed this so they could take this picture and airdrop it over Paris so they'd have an idea of what was going to happen. This is Rotterdam now, all built back. So the Germans lost World War II, the Japanese lost World War II, but if you go to Detroit, it looks sort of like the United States lost World War II. The emphasis, about 30% of the land area that had buildings on it in 1960 now is empty. And there's a lot of empty land. The transit system, other than that little toy train that goes one way around in a circle, it's all gone. They have all the highways that Michigan DOT wanted to build. They're all there. They have solved their congestion problem. They spent billions and billions of dollars doing it. Then New Orleans, Claiborne Avenue. This also was in 1966, they started to move it to speed up the traffic in the Tremaine neighborhood. The city's now planning on restoring the boulevard and taking out the freeway. And they're falling down. This is one that Sam Schwartz, the guy who's head of Sam Schwartz, worked for the city of New York and fell down in 73 on the west side and fell down again in 75. Now it's just West Street. Property values went up. The Embarcadero, which you saw earlier today. In Paris, they're about to remove the Route de Pompidou that was built back in the early 70s and put the embankment back. And in Milwaukee, we removed the freeway. And that's coming along. But the most dramatic of all is Seoul, South Korea, the Chechong River. The freeway that was built, the U.S. government paid for most of it right after the Korean War, built right through the middle of Seoul, over the river, carried 160,000 cars a day. It was removed in 2003, and now it's all built up. The river's restored. There's two moving lanes in each direction on each side of the river. They didn't restore the capacity of the freeway. They do have one rail transit and one BRT project that helped. There's the mayor who did it. Very happy guy because he had the guts to do the right thing. And now let's talk about Chicago. So I think I have just enough time to do that. There are some opportunities here. Now, these ideas are completely in the category of weird, what the hell are you talking about category. But that's the stage we're in. This is I-94 over here, and I-55 going up to Lakeshore Drive. The ugliest part of Lakeshore Drive is where the interstate system comes into it. That's really the ugliest portion. And what I'm suggesting is that it should be considered, instead of spending, the $80 million they say it'll cost to refurbish from here to here, I think it'll end up costing a lot more than that. Instead of doing that, they should remove the freeway from I-90-94 and put in a multi-way boulevard and liberate the Lakeshore Drive from what Lakeshore Drive really works well because on both ends it comes into the street grid. And so the freeway has never taken over the waterfront like it has if you've seen the freeway in Cleveland, for example. And it has grade connections in certain places which kind of slows the traffic down so everybody doesn't use it. But this is how I-55 looks as it's coming toward Lakeshore Drive. And imagine it as a multi-way boulevard instead. It would connect Bronzeville with the rest of downtown Chicago. Right now it's very auto-centric. The other one I just want to mention, just throwing it out there, don't hit me. The Ohio Street feeder, which goes up to Orleans Street and dumps all that traffic on Orleans. It's very convenient for people that drive down from Wisconsin, get drunk, and at 2 a.m. in the morning and fly out on the feeder to get on I-94. But it doesn't help the property values in the neighborhood. Now, the alternative to it, you can see with all the other ramps, this is near Jackson, Madison, all those. You notice how the ramps at that part of the Kennedy are real close to the freeway. And so you immediately go from the world of the freeway to the city. So when you get off at Jackson, the dimensions of the street, within 10 feet of turning onto Jackson Street, within 10 feet, the exact same dimensions they are a half mile further east. And so you're immediately in that. But with the Ohio ramp, I guess you can't go backwards, so I won't. So with the Ohio ramp, it runs you all the way up to Orleans Street and ruins the property value on the way. So you can see the uses tend to be not as intense. There's how the ramps are coming off of the part near the Kennedy. So if we got rid of these, if we turned it into a multi-way boulevard, and it's got its obstacles, like, there's a railroad track that services the Chicago Tribune, which we need to have some discussions with them about that. But anyway, you can see that it degrades the property around it, and there's a lot of lost opportunity. The pedestrian counts are really low. You can see there's fake pedestrian sculptures that were up on the street. When I took these pictures, there's some more of them, to sort of show you what it would be like if people actually did occupy the space. But you can see it. It's not something that's adding value to the neighborhood. What is the big hurry of getting that traffic to dump it into Orleans when the city could have so much more value? And if you look at the property values near these freeways, they tend to be lower than the things that are nearby. Now, how do you fix it? This is the central artery in San Francisco. Excuse me, I got to go. Can you want that? So this is the Octavia Boulevard, multi-way boulevard. And it works well. It carries lots of traffic, not as much traffic as the freeway did before. Although at rush hour, it actually can carry more than the traffic did before, because at rush hour, the old central artery actually came to a stop. And then you have the other traffic on the side streets. I think I pushed it a little bit. Sorry. And then you have boulevards here you can look at, like our Logan Boulevard. And just to prove that Chicago can actually move forward on these issues, that it doesn't always have to be going in the wrong direction. As much as the DOT wants to turn Lakeshore Drive into a freeway and get rid of all the grade intersections, which has been their dream for a long time, although maybe not everybody there. And they did get the Chicago DOT to close down the Queen's Landing, which is where Queen Elizabeth landed in 1953, I believe it was. It's back. And the world didn't end. You can walk across the street again, and somebody from Indiana sitting there sneering because they're on their way to Wisconsin and they have to slow down and actually stop their car and wait for these people to walk. But it's good for Chicago. And I compliment the new mayor, Rahm Emanuel, for making that happen. Thank you very much.